Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kira and today I am so excited for this video because I'm talking about one of my favorite mediums, alcohol markers. I really struggle to articulate why I love them so much. There's just something incredibly satisfying about the way they glide onto the paper and leave such a smooth, streak-free finish. Now, I don't often feature them in my videos just because a majority of my coloring books are double-sided, so we know alcohol markers and double-sided coloring books do not mix due to the bleed-through. However, when I am working in one of my single-sided coloring books, you definitely know that I'm bringing out my alcohol markers and doing a base of color. I've done several pages this way and I find that alcohol markers just really up the vibrancy of a page and also help eliminate any white tooth before I go in with my pencil shading. That being said, I've already covered how I layer my pencils over top of alcohol marker bases in past videos, so today I thought I would set myself a little challenge. I'm gonna test my skills and color an entire page just with alcohol markers. Okay, look, it's probably not gonna be just alcohol markers because we all know that I have to go in with my acrylic markers and glitter gel pen details at the end, but I am going to avoid pencil at all costs. And the set of alcohol markers that I'll be using today are from my favorite brand of all time, Ohuhu. They recently sent me their gorgeous 120 set of Honolulu dual tip alcohol markers, which, as the name suggests, has two nibs, a brush tip for precision and a chisel tip for large areas. And Ohuhu was kind enough to set up a discount code for me to share with you guys. For the next 6 months, you can use the discount code UPictured10 for 10% off any purchase on the Ohuhu website, so definitely get in there and put it to good use. And I'll share more about these markers later in the video, as well as some essential tips for mastering alcohol markers as I color. But first, let's cover the most common struggle that people find when working with alcohol markers, which is avoiding streaks and achieving a smooth blend between colors. Which leads me into my first tip for creating smooth blends between colors, which is use the correct paper whenever possible. The smooth paper in this marker pad is 150 GSM, acid-free, bleed-proof, and double-sided, making it the optimal base to create the most seamless blends possible with your alcohol markers. Now we can talk about the 4 different methods to create a seamless blend between different colored alcohol markers. So this first method is the one that I started off learning, which is overlapping. This involves applying one color, overlapping it with the next while both areas are still wet, and then going back over the overlap with the lighter marker to soften the transition. Repeated overlapping allows the colors to mix gradually and create a smooth gradient. The second method is my personal preference, which is layering. Typically you start by applying a light base color, then gradually layering darker shades on top while the ink is still wet. And then you go back over with lighter markers again to smooth out the transitions. This method gives you more control as you can adjust the intensity by adding more layers without overwhelming your coloring page. Now this third method is either called feathering or flicking. It's super effective for rendering textures like hair, fur, or grass, and I especially love using it for trees. You flick the darkest color towards the middle, overlap it with a midtone using the same flicking motion, and then finish by flicking the lightest color from the mid-tone overlap. This helps blend the edges and creates a smooth transition. The final method is the one I rarely use because honestly, it scares me a little. This is the tip-to-tip blending method. You touch the tip of a lighter marker to a darker one to pick up some pigment, then color with the lighter marker to create a smooth transition as the dark color fades. The reason this scares me is that I feel like I don't have much control over where the blend happens, but if you're feeling brave and experimental, it's a fantastic way to create the most seamless blend. Now let's dive into coloring a page with these Ohuhu markers. Today I'll be coloring a page from a book that I recently added to my coloring book collection, which is A Year of Witches by Yusikyu. Hopefully I didn't completely butcher that pronunciation. I really adore the witchy illustrations in this coloring book. It's going to be perfect for the upcoming Halloween season. And this here is the page that I've chosen for my alcohol marker challenge. And as I promised earlier, I'll be sharing my essential tips for mastering alcohol marker coloring, as well as why I love the Ohuhu markers so much as I color. Let's see how I go with this challenge. As usual with these shorter tutorial videos on my channel, I won't be showing myself coloring every single element on the page. However, I'll demonstrate the majority and display each Ohuhu color combination that I used in the corner of the screen. This will be shown in order from top to bottom: shadow color, midtone, and highlight. As you watch me color this first yellow combination, you'll see that I experimented quite a bit with my technique to find the best way to achieve the result that I was looking for. After coloring a few elements, I discovered that layering was definitely the way to go, which then I used for pretty much every other aspect on the page. So here is the 5-step process that I settled on. Number 1, start with the base of the highlight color. 2, add shadows using the darkest color. 3, blend the two colors together with the midtone. 4, go over the entire element again with the highlight color to blend all the colors together. And then step 5 is optional, but I often went in and reapplied the shadow color to deepen any shading that might have been lost during the blending process. Now I'm clearly going against the first tip that I shared in this video because I am coloring in a book that is printed on Amazon paper. However, I know that sometimes you have no choice but to use an Amazon printed coloring book if it's the only option available for the illustrations you want to color. So I thought it might be helpful to demonstrate coloring on Amazon paper during this video to share some tricks for getting the most out of your alcohol markers when working with this type of paper. Amazon paper isn't ideal for alcohol markers because it's typically thin and porous, making it prone to bleed through, as we all know. The paper's thinness causes the ink to soak through super easily, potentially ruining the next page or making it difficult to achieve smooth blends. Moreover, the paper may absorb too much ink too quickly, leading to uneven saturation, and if overworked, it can start to pill or tear the paper. When using alcohol markers in Amazon coloring books, it's important to take these 4 precautions due to the thin paper. Number 1, always place a protective sheet behind your coloring page to prevent bleed through onto the next page. You can use the protective sheet that comes with your Ohuhu markers, or you can do what I've done here and just put a scrap piece of paper behind the page that you're working on. Number 2 is to work in light layers to avoid oversaturating the paper, because as I've mentioned, too much ink can cause bleeding or tearing. Number 3, blend quickly while the ink is still wet, but avoid overworking areas to prevent the paper from pilling. And number 4, let each layer dry fully before adding more to prevent the ink from seeping through or causing blotches. If you want to avoid coloring on Amazon paper but love the illustrations in an Amazon printed coloring book, you can always scan the images onto your computer and print them on better quality paper. It's best to use a laser printer rather than an inkjet for your coloring pages. Laser printers use toner that's fused to the paper with heat, which prevents smudging or bleeding when you apply alcohol markers, whereas inkjet printers use liquid ink that can smear or blend with the marker ink. You can also do this with your double-sided coloring books. Maybe you have hand issues or just prefer coloring with markers instead of pencils, so feel free to scan and print the pages from your double-sided books and even get them bound at your local print shop. Another trick I've actually seen people do, if you want to be a little bit bougie and fancy, is to buy 2 copies of a double-sided coloring book. Color all the left side illustrations in one copy and then the right side in the other. Then you can bind them together once you've finished both copies. Here's another tip that I am still horrible at, as you'll see while I'm coloring, which is avoid coloring right up to the line on a coloring page. The ink tends to spread slightly as it dries, so leave a small gap between the edge of your coloring area and the line, as this allows the ink to naturally fill in the space without bleeding over. Keeping your work nice and clean and within the lines for a more polished result. My next tip is one that I don't always follow, but I definitely should, which is always swatch out your markers and utilize blank pages at the back of your book for testing. As we know, know, most marker caps don't accurately represent the true ink color, so relying on them alone can lead to unexpected results. Also, alcohol markers generally dry to a different color, so it's good to know what the color will look like once dry too. Additionally, the same marker might look different on various types of paper, depending on the paper's texture and absorbency. So by testing first, you can avoid surprises and better plan your color palette and blending techniques. I also recommend that when you're starting off with alcohol markers, stick to color combinations within the same color family, like you saw me do earlier when demonstrating the 4 different blending methods. Similar colors naturally blend together more smoothly and create soft transitions without harsh lines or abrupt changes in tone. Practice your blending between similar colors at first, and then once you've mastered those, you can experiment with blending more contrasting colors. Now, this next tip is one that I haven't experimented with much myself, but I've seen others talk about it, so I thought I'd share it with you today, which is layering with gray markers. Adding a layer of warm or cool gray under or over your colors is an excellent way to enhance shadows and add depth to your artwork. Grays can also help tone down overly vibrant colors, giving your piece a more natural and balanced appearance. By layering gray tones, you can create subtle contrasts that make your artwork look more three-dimensional without altering the core hues of your colors. Warm grays add a soft, cozy feel, while cool grays give a cooler, more structured look, allowing you to tailor the atmosphere of your piece. This technique is especially useful for creating realistic lighting effects and adding complexity to your color palette. My next tip probably deserves an entirely separate video for visual demonstration. Let me know if that's something you'd like to see. The tip is to vary your stroke techniques to create realistic textures that mimic the surface you're coloring. For wood, you could use long, slightly curved strokes to imitate grain patterns, layering different shades of brown and adding fine lines for detail. For stone, you could try dabbing or stippling motions with various grays and browns to create a rough, uneven surface that resembles rock. And for grass, you can use the flicking motions that I demonstrated at the beginning of this video with different shades of green, starting from the base and moving upward to create the appearance of individual blades. Adding these little details really helps bring extra depth and realism to your pages. Before I move on to the myriad of reasons why I love Ohuhu's alcohol markers, I want to share one final tip about properly storing your alcohol markers. While it's not a hard and fast rule, it's generally recommended to store your alcohol markers horizontally to ensure the ink distributes evenly across both nibs. Keep them in a cool, dry place away from direct sunlight to prevent the ink from drying out or evaporating. It is my absolute dream to one day own the entire 320 set of alcohol markers from Ohuhu and also purchase their bamboo storage system to keep them all in. Every time I see that organization system, it's like visual ASMR for me. So incredibly satisfying. And I mean, this is obvious, but always cap your markers tightly after use. Let's just say that I've got more than one alcohol marker stain on my beige couch because I didn't cap my markers properly. Yeah, you don't need to reprimand me. I do that enough for the both of us, as well as my partner. All right, now let's dive into why Ohuhu is my go-to brand for alcohol markers. First off, I'm a budget conscious gal, even if my coloring hauls suggest otherwise. Affordability is key when I'm shopping for my supplies. While I don't mind investing in quality, I'm always looking to get the most bang for my buck, and compared to other brands on the market, Ohuhu's alcohol markers are just incredibly affordable without sacrificing performance. This makes them accessible to everyone from beginners to pros, and I also love that many of the Ohuhu markers are refillable with replaceable nibs, adding even more value since you can extend their life instead of replacing them entirely. Another reason I love the Ohuhu markers is their range of dual tips, so you can choose the marker that best suits your needs. As I showed you at the beginning, the set I'm using today features the brush tip and chisel tip combo. The brush tip mimics a paintbrush, which is perfect for smooth, flexible strokes and blending, while the chisel tip is great for bold lines and filling larger areas. They also offer a brush tip and fine tip combo, giving you precision with the fine tip and fluidity with the brush tip. And then there's also a fine tip and chisel tip combo, pairing a fine bullet tip for intricate details with a broad chisel tip for coloring large areas or creating thick lines. So yeah, as you can tell, I am a massive fan of the Ohuhu alcohol markers. I'll stop fangirling in your ear now and let you enjoy the coloring in peace for a couple of minutes, and then I'll be back to chat you through how I colored the night sky. Now I'm going to color the night sky black to keep things simple, but instead of using the black alcohol marker from the Honolulu set, I'm going to try out this fine liner drawing pen set from Ohuhu. I had not tried these fine liners out before coloring this page, and wow. I think they're about to become my holy grail for when adding extra elements to my coloring pages. If you're a regular viewer of mine, you know I've been using the Unipen fine liners, which are pretty good, but I do find that sometimes they smudge when I apply alcohol markers or Prismacolors over top of them. These Ohuhu pens don't do that at all. They don't smudge when paired with watercolors or alcohol markers, and honestly, I was just gobsmacked by this. The pack comes with a great variety of thicknesses, including a brush tip, which is what I used for the coloring page to color in the night sky. And I also used the 0.1mm fine liner to create some extra texture for the wood elements on my page. Okay, so here's how the page looked after I finished all the alcohol marker and fine liner work. And here's how it looked after adding extra details with my acrylic markers and glitter gel pens. As you can see, adding these extra details really refines the end result. And I also found that I could use my acrylic markers to fix any blending issues that I encountered with the alcohol markers. I did contemplate adding some highlights to the witch's hair, but ultimately I ended up chickening out. I'll try it one day, but I just did not want to ruin the page. And considering since the last time I only used alcohol markers on a coloring page was exactly pretty much 1 year ago now, I don't think this turned out too badly. The only blend I wasn't super happy with was the pink combination. I think this was more of a color picking issue on my part rather than a technical issue. And I definitely need to practice coloring skin. My witches are looking a little bit sunburnt. Yeah. Even though this video is titled Mastering Alcohol Markers, I'm obviously still not a master yet. And I probably never will be. But that's one of the reasons why I love coloring and I keep coming back to it, because there's always new techniques to learn, new mediums to explore, and new ways to improve. I don't think I'll be solely coloring with alcohol markers in the future, but I do think I will pick up some of the techniques that I learned during this challenge and use them when basing my pages in the future. Instead of doing just a straight color alcohol marker base, I might try doing some basic shading and blends with my alcohol markers at the basing stage, and then go over the top of it with pencils at the end to just smooth the blends out. But yeah, hopefully you picked up at least one new technique from this video that you can take home, practice and master yourself. And remember to use my discount code of Pictured10 for 10% off any item on the Ohuhu website. Happy coloring, friends! Have a good day, have a good life, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!